We're here now with Nate Fender, co-founder and COO of Ario.
Hi, Chris.
Nate, welcome.
Thanks for having us.
So let's start off. How do you describe Ario to
Sure.
folks you meet?
Yeah, well, we help increase safety and efficiency in industrial environments by giving workers the ability to create spatial information by using augmented reality. And that comes in the form of a mobile application and a web dashboard that work together that allow teams to force multiply their abilities.
Okay, so it sounds like you've said that quite a few times. Yeah.
Thought about it.
Is that your elevator pitch?
One of them.
Okay, one of the
Yeah,
many.
it depends on
depending
the
who
elevator.
you're talking to,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, the elevator. Okay, so how did you come up with the name Ario? And
Sure. Actually, my wife came up with it. Several years ago, before Ario actually started, Joe and myself and my wife, Suzanne, who is a designer by trade, we were meeting once a week to just kind of kick around things that we could do on the side with augmented reality. And one of the issues was we didn't really have a name. And it was not a formalized thing at that point, other than we were just meeting once a week. We were like, well, we need to give it a name.
mm-hmm.
And my wife, Suzanne, was, I think, in the shower one day, and she's like, I got it. And it was Ario. And she came back, and Joe and I were both like, that's amazing, you know. And it was, a lot of people capitalize the letters as if it stands for something. It doesn't.
Right.
But we created a backronym for it, where Suze helped us with that augmented reality input-output, which is convenient. And
that's what I had
helps.
always assumed.
Yeah.
It meant.
But it doesn't. It's not
Otherwise
an abbreviation.
it's
It just is a
abstract
nice,
word.
short, sweet word.
And having an abstract word as a name, of course, is probably helpful with the trademark.
Yes.
Right.
It is. Yep. So we have a registered trademark. We were able to get the .com. A lot of things have played in our favor in terms of the branding aspect.
So you mentioned Joe and Suzanne.
Mm-hmm.
So Joe is the CEO, right?
Yep.
Can you tell us a little bit about him and the other key members of your team?
Absolutely. So Joe would be here today, except he's on the road right now at a private engineering expo that we were invited to. So he's out there selling it, which is exciting. So Joe and I, we have a pretty rich background together. We both went to Christopher Newport University and Newport News. We were roommates after college for a while, and we kept in touch all the way through as we went into our careers. Joe spent, I want to say, just over 14 years with Huntington Ingalls, working for Newport News Shipbuilding, where he ended up working and leading parts of their augmented reality team. So his background has been heavily rooted in using this type of technology for practical application. In my background, I worked at several different digital agencies doing project management, product management, and so the culmination of our two backgrounds led to the founding of our endeavor. And what we did was we were lucky. We were very quickly able to find a few other team members to really round out some of the areas that we really needed. One being Jacob Galito, who is our UI UX. What's the word? Sherpa, because when you're really working on something that is abstract to a lot of people, you need someone that has a background in taking what is abstract and bringing it to the forefront with the ways that people need to interact with it. And he has his degree from the Art Institute of Pittsburgh in game design. So what's really interesting about that is that he understands what it's like to take spatial design and put it in the hands of people that maybe never experienced it before. So he really brought that to the table. We have Andrew Goto and Tomas Foster, both full stack developers. Andrew leads our mobile development and Tomas leads our web development side. And without anybody on our team, we wouldn't be where we are. So it's a true team effort.
Yeah. Well, thanks for that. I think, and I've met all of them, and they're all great guys.
Yeah.
So the last two you mentioned, they've since moved up to New Hampshire and are working remotely.
That's right.
So you guys are, it's nice to know you guys are that tight that you can work efficiently and still be productive.
Absolutely. We have our morning stand-up every day. We do video calls throughout the day. The only difference is that we don't have to feel each other breathe on one another. I mean, everything is as it should be, and it's great.
Yeah. What I love about your story is it really feels like and not that I haven't met others in town like this, but it's as if you could be saying this stuff from Silicon Valley. Like you guys are really some cutting edge innovation, and how you talk about it and how you're approaching it is like, not unlike any other startup that you would find in perhaps a much more robust entrepreneurial ecosystem like in Silicon Valley.
Right.
So yeah, big
I
props
think,
to you for that.
Well, thank you. It's very much appreciated. I think what's interesting about where we sit in Hampton Roads, and I speak uniquely from our own perspective on this, but I think it's somewhat shared by some other startups that we have encountered, is that given the geographic location of Hampton Roads and where it's located in the United States, it both has strengths and weaknesses as they relate to technological advancement. And some of that plays into the human capital that you have access to for talent. Some of that plays into the industries that you might be bringing your solutions to, and whether or not they're positioned to bring in work from a startup, knowing how to work with a startup. And I think we've found both strengths in some areas and weaknesses in others, where our experience as we went through an accelerator out in California, everyone understands what you're doing. In the first 3 or 4 minutes, it's very easy to communicate in an environment where people have been exposed to such a density of technology and solutions that sit in that. Whereas here, it forces you to refine your pitch. Not that you're not forced to there, it's just that it reinforces the value of how you communicate. It puts way more of a spotlight on the importance of being able to distill your message in a proper format.
Right.
Which is good.
So we've talked a lot about your team, and it sounds like you guys are really solid. Let's get back to Ario, the company. So what do you think? What are you looking at, or your target markets?
Sure.
What has been your beachhead so far, if any?
So we're very focused on the industrial environment. Specifically for us, it's manufacturing, energy, including oil and gas, and also construction. So what we really aim to do with our platform is to have it serve as a force multiplier for employees. In manufacturing alone, between 2015 and 2025, about 2.5 million jobs will go unfilled due to lack of technical abilities in the candidates themselves, or lack of ability to critically think their way through certain problems. So what that means is that there's a shortage of individuals that have the competency to deal with certain complex scenarios. In manufacturing, you have really long manufacturing lines with robots that need to be reconfigured and serviced. In oil and gas and energy, you have individuals that are part of a workforce, and with Dominion Energy specifically, and this is on the public record, about a third of their workforce is eligible for retirement between now and 2022, I want to say. And so what happens is across the board, they have positive problems in that their revenues are trending upward, but their human capital access is trending downward. So the positive problem is that they have the capital to apply to looking for a solution, and they're looking for tools and methods to put into people's hands so that they can reduce possibly the training time, but not reduce the competency. With our tool, we're proving that the ability exists to reduce training time, but also increase efficiency, and also provide them with a tool that gives them just-in-time training on the job, so that you can take the knowledge of 1 or 2 experts in an area and touch 20 to 25 different individuals quicker.
And if anybody watching is at all, confused or sees this as a rather complex answer, I encourage you to go to ario.com. You've got a great video, front and center there, that really illustrates visually, how Ario is tackling this problem and helping those individuals in the industrial environment be more productive, save time, increase safety. Right.
So to distill it even further, in essence, there are over 500 million phones in people's pockets right now, and they're just being deployed in some cases into industrial environments. Now, if we could tell you that you could pull the phone out of your pocket and it would tell you where a problem exists in your plant, and it would take you to the problem. You, on a personalized basis, as Chris, you arrive at the object, maybe it is a piece of equipment. And when you get there, it verifies, the system verifies that you are Chris and you are at this piece of equipment. And you are there to perform a task that has 45 different steps.
Mm-hmm.
You begin the process and it walks you through every single step, tracking your progress all the way through, reporting that back to the employer and on your record as a performance. And then the historic record of your performance in terms of what was done to that piece of equipment lives there spatially, as long as you choose for it to do so.
Right.
And if this is a piece of equipment that maybe has an anomaly that you have to do something special to, it has a nick in it, so you repair it. And the setting is typically at 300, but it's at 500 because of something you did. You can leave that information at the point of issue, so that the next individual that comes along in 6 months finds it and says, well, why is this way?
Mm-hmm.
Well, oh, Chris tells me that when he was here, he had to do this to it.
Yeah.
And so you create that running record of knowledge spatially in your world by digitally overlaying it onto
and
the
that
actual
especially
object.
relates back to what you were saying with the, a lot of folks retiring from these industrial environments, and,
Right.
and with them goes that institutional knowledge.
That's right.
Unless you've used, the company has used some tool to help retain that knowledge.
Right.
And I certainly from personal experience, taking on some pretty abstract roles, and you get into it, and there's nothing left for you or laid out for you, and what is probably a convoluted directory of hundreds, if not thousands, of documents which you can't possibly have time to
Right.
read, much less digest.
Mm-hmm.
and think through. So this is putting those instructions literally where they need to be,
Right.
in a spatial environment.
That's right.
So this is a couch.
Yes.
This is a camera. This is how you operate the camera.
Right.
And I wouldn't need to know that information really, at least with the Ario platform. It exists at that piece of equipment using the smartphone device to pull up the instructions of how to interact, or what sort of maintenance or
That's right.
or activities need to be done with this particular piece of equipment or object or whatever it
That's
may
right.
be.
And
Right.
it goes multi-layers deep. Right now we're deploying to mobile phones because that's the ubiquity of the technology.
Sure.
And there are 500 million devices that can run our software now, and 4.5 billion by 2022. But that's not to say we're not road mapping to support glasses, and we have experience developing for
Mhm.
glasses. We just very strategically are going after the market differently.
Right.
So our marketing videos will not show what some other marketing videos show with just development level devices. Our goal is to be able to provide a solution that can go in an intrinsically safe manner and provide immediate value. It's, when you think about it, we're trying to replace the instruction manual. That's the goal. Everyone has had an instruction manual for every widget they buy, the vehicle you drive. Anything in this room has an instruction manual. Where are they? Nobody knows. What would I do if I needed to fix that? I don't know.
Yeah.
But I should be able to know, because I'm competent. I could repair the light up there. I just don't know where to begin.
Yeah.
So what do? I Google it, I YouTube it, I whatever. But you take that concept and you apply it into the workforce, and eventually into your home and my home. When it's ubiquitous technology, it will be there in 10 years' time, and I would love to dig this video up in 10 years to see if this prediction is right. I firmly believe that we'll be walking around, and maybe not everyone, but our environment will be painted with data, and it will speak to you based on who you are, what you decide to be talked to about. And it will begin in the workforce, and I think it will very quickly move into the public space.
Yeah, very insightful. Well put, Nate. Well put. So let's move on to the next question. What has shaped you, Nate Fender?
Yeah.
And if any of your other team were here, I'd ask them the same question. But you're here, so what has helped you become an entrepreneur, to fit this role, to build a company from scratch, and in an industry that's not very well formed yet.
Right.
What has helped shape you as an entrepreneur?
Well, I think that my record would demonstrate that I don't stay in any one place for a particularly long time. And I think that part of that is rooted in a restlessness to be satisfied. And so I kind of have this personal belief that when I get comfortable with something, I'm no longer learning anything, which is a problem when you're, if your goal is ever to go be in one company for your whole career, unless what you're doing is incrementally improving and you can measure those results, I get bored very quickly. So I have found myself getting bored before, and I can say with 100% certainty now that I'm living this is the most challenging thing I've ever done. I don't know that any previous experience prepares you fully for something like this, but I can say it's certainly, you can certainly draw upon lessons that you've had in the past.
Right.
And every once in a while things will come and play and be like, oh, I've seen something like this before. It's never the same thing, but it's relatable. Yeah. And, more tangibly speaking, you have hard skills that you develop in former work experiences. You can most certainly transfer them and apply them.
Sure.
But I think personality-wise, for me, I look at life as this one shot, this long project I'm managing, and it's my project, my personal project, and there's this grand vision at the end of it, and there are all these small discrete tasks to get to whatever that goal is. And for me, it's no regrets, and ultimate satisfaction of saying, when I'm on my deathbed, well, I did all the things that I wanted to try to do.
Yeah.
Whether or not you achieve them, it doesn't really matter, because how many times have you worked your butt off to do something, and then you get it and you're like, well, that's it. But all the lead up with the anticipation, the excitement around it, the joy that brought you is actually what it was about.
Right.
So whether this flies or dies, it doesn't matter.
Yeah,
because
it must be very similar to like what, let's say, Lewis and Clark, or any of the frontiers people, or even the folks coming to the New World. It wasn't necessarily that they didn't know how to sail, that they didn't know how to ford a river, or how to push oxen across the vast plains or anything.
Right.
Yet it was a new frontier. They didn't really know what was going to be around the next mountain crest, or around the next bend of the river. And eventually they got to the Pacific Ocean. They got to the New World. They built, what you see here today. And that's very similar to what it's like to be a startup entrepreneur, right?
100%.
You know that you have the capability to manage just about anything that comes your way, but today you don't know what that thing is going to be.
Oh yeah.
And that constant uncertainty, I think, is both what keeps a lot of folks out of becoming entrepreneurs or starting their own business, but also what invigorates those that do.
Yeah,
right?
I think that's accurate. You will look at someone that goes skydiving or bungee jumping or even rock climbing, and you'll say, why the heck do they do that? And they'll say, well, it's the rush that you get. There's definitely a rush component to doing this, because and I liken it to being in a band. I was in a really serious band for 8 years from college. It was called Chasing Arrows.
Chasing Arrows.
Yeah, so we did it through college and then post-college, and it sounds silly, but at the same time, you're chasing after what feels to be the impossible.
Yeah.
And there is an inherent adrenaline rush to when you are able to open for a really big name band and there are 5,000 people in front of you, and you're performing to an engaged audience. And then the very next day, you go back home and you play to an empty bar. So that is how being in a startup feels.
There's the ups and the downs.
Yeah, and there can be massive swings, and so when you read about, some of the depression rates or anxiety rates that sit inside of the entrepreneur communities, and then you also look at artists, if you think about maybe the parallel between the two, it's my belief that that's what it is. It's this never-ending swing and constantly trying to get what that rush is, but at a sustained rate, which you cannot do.
Yeah.
The life doesn't give you that ability.
Right.
You would one without the other, you wouldn't know what it is. So you have to embrace that swing.
How philosophical.
No,
Yeah.
but in all honesty, like, that's truthfully how I feel about it.
I
And
wholeheartely
you know,
agree. No, and that's a
it's
great way to
fascinating.
put it and a great picture to paint for us. But I want to get back to, so now you're in 757 Accelerate, right? You previously went to San Francisco or the Bay Area and participated in another accelerator program out there for a few months earlier this year. Let's talk about 757 Accelerate. What led you guys to apply and to ultimately join this accelerator program?
Yes, so I think we were, being a local startup, we were kind of, poked on multiple fronts about, hey, there's this new initiative that's going to kick off, and we didn't really know what to expect. We didn't really have any expectations. I was a judge on 757 pitch panel. I believe one night you all had me down, and I met.
That was in March, I want to say, at 1701.
There you go.
Virginia Beach Oceanfront, great co-working space, a lot of great programming over there.
Yep, and great plug. And that evening, I believe the executive director of 757 Accelerate, Evans McMillian, was also on the judging panel.
Right.
So. And this was right before I went out to the Bay Area. So we were able to talk, and she said, oh, I'm going to be starting this new thing. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. And then I left, and that was it. But meanwhile, while I was out of state, Joe Weaver, our CEO, we were communicating, and he was saying, this new accelerator starting, I think we should apply. It sounds very promising. And so we did. We threw our name into the hat. And I will say, with every fiber of my being, it has been 100% worth it. Having gone through the thing in California and done this, they're very different, and I wouldn't swap one for the other. It's not like that. There are things that we're learning now that I wish we'd learned 2 years ago. Which is, it's great because there are some folks in our cohort, they have younger businesses, and I'm excited that they're learning it now, and are able to implement some of those things very quickly, and we're trying to do the same thing, but it's just been incredible. The mentors that Evans has brought in have been fantastic.
Right.
And
I mean, I say wow, but it doesn't really come as a surprise to me because of all the energy that we had in the community leading up to it. We knew that this was, yes, it was going to be, a brand new program, and we were building the plane as we flew it. But I didn't have any doubts that we would be hearing these sort of sentiments from you all, the inaugural cohort, but that we're hearing it, with no hesitation whatsoever, it just feels awesome. It really does. I mean,
it's super impressive, to be perfectly honest. We had no expectations, and I don't know what else to say. We're very, very pleased with it, and I would recommend it to anyone else.
And there's also something to be said about, having a diversity of companies in this. A lot of accelerator programs, especially in more mature markets like the Bay Area, tend to be more specialized, have a cohort that is represented by, a specific industry or market or domain or problem solution set, but that there is so much diversity in this one, I think that adds a lot of value.
Absolutely.
To the program that you're 2.5 years in. Meanwhile, SVT Robotics is 2 months in. And they're learning a lot from you guys, and of course their experience in robotics in very similar industries as you. So yeah, all that reciprocity of learning is a great thing. Let's wrap this up. I want to ask 2 more questions.
Sure.
If there's anything that our audience could perhaps provide to you guys in terms of of help or assistance, can you name a couple of things off the top of your head?
I think that our general ask would be, in the name of startups, not specifically for us, it would be if you work in a business that is larger than 5 people, and you believe that your business needs to continue innovating, which we all do, it would be to consider how to work with startups. And if for nothing else, go out and do some research on ways to be able to bring innovation in. If you're not able to innovate inside of your own company,
Sure.
how would you partner with a smaller company? What would that process be like? And then implement those initiatives.
Okay. So that leads right into the next question.
Which
go ahead.
I'll
Go
add
ahead.
one piece to that,
Please,
which is,
please do.
and a lot of that starts with exposing your problems as a company.
And being transparent.
And being transparent about them.
Right.
If you're unwilling to talk about your problems as a company, it's really hard for a startup or anyone else to help you solve them.
Right.
So I would say that those two pieces have to work together
Sure.
in parallel to create
And if you want to say it more euphemistically, we can say, what are your challenges as a company,
Sure.
right? Because that certainly elicits, I think, more thought about solutions,
Sure.
right, to those challenges.
Sure.
So does problems, but challenges may be a little more easier to swallow, especially for those, larger egos out there. But and I mean, no offense by that. We're all people, and we all suffer from the human condition, right? But so you mentioned that. And my last question was going to be, can you recommend any like books or podcasts? But since you said you would love for other companies larger than 5 employees, if they aren't already connected to the entrepreneurial ecosystem and startups, to research how they can, are there any books or podcasts in that lane that could help them, find out about it and understand the challenges that startups face and why it would be important and extremely valuable for those companies.
Right. So I don't necessarily have any tangible resources to point them to because it's not my line of work. But that being said, there are a number of ecosystems that exist that engage corporate partners with startups, and they provide a lot of resources, namely in exposing how large corporations have situated themselves to work with startups. And I would say just go look into that because there are some that are doing it really well. And this this thought hasn't been around a really long time. So I'd say there's a lot of change and evolution
maybe
happening.
a couple of notable companies who are doing it well that you're
Yeah,
aware of?
Man Hummel
Okay.
is one. They work in air purification. They've done a really good job of both internal innovation and also working with startups. I witnessed that in California, and I would probably say go look into that. There are a lot.
Cool. Well, more generally then, any books or podcasts you can recommend to our
From
audience?
the startup standpoint, I would recommend a podcast called Masters of Scale with Reid Hoffman. He was a co-founder of LinkedIn. One of his bits of wisdom is interesting because he says if you aren't embarrassed by your first product release, you've shipped too late.
Love
And
it.
it helps me specifically, when I feel that it's not perfect, let go.
Yeah.
Because
and another one that Facebook used to use is move fast and break things. I would say that there's probably a point in time, as they have done, where you should not abide by that, particularly that you've moved into the condition of being a going concern, a relatively stable company.
Right.
But as a startup, certainly moving fast and breaking things. And if your first product is perfect, you waited way too long.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think he also said, Reid Hoffman, said something about, and this is probably a misquote, but having a startup is like jumping out of a plane and having to build a parachute on your way down, something to that degree.
Sure.
And that is
Yeah.
definitely what it feels like.
Yeah.
Impending doom is always running at your face, and then you're trying to make sure that it's a soft landing.
Yeah.
So Masters of Scale podcast with Reid Hoffman, Making Ideas Happen, which is a book by Scott Belsky, and I actually was given that book by Drew Ungvarsky at Grow.
Okay.
When I worked contract there for a little while, and everyone was given that book, and that has been very impactful on me because it basically analyzes some of the most productive creative people in the world and how they remain productive. Because a lot of times creative folks have this imbalance of, how would you put it, creative ambition and not necessarily a great way of executing on it.
Or the discipline.
Right, and this helps think of ways to do that. And I'm not necessarily that creative a person. I come from a project management background, but working with creative people, and that helps you think through that and find ways to approach everything you do in a manner that can be broken into small tasks for this really large picture project. So making ideas happen, and then I would say just from a general sense, the tipping Point by Malcolm Gladwell. I've really enjoyed that book because it focuses on how ideas, products, movements spread and how you can get to that. And I think that kind of taps into human psychology across society and culture, and finding those mechanisms in your own business and with your own clients, and then how to help propagate that from a network effect standpoint, and also in your marketing is important. There are a lot of moving pieces, but those are resources that I really enjoy.
Cool. Well, there you have it. There you have it. You have a longer list of books than I was anticipating, but it was a great list, and I would highly recommend. I haven't read all of them, but sound like worthwhile reads. Nate, it's been a pleasure.
Chris, appreciate it.
Hey,
thanks a lot,
man. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
We look forward to hearing about how the rest of the program goes. We'll be doing another round of these afterward.
Awesome.
So wish you the best of luck. We've got Nate Fender, COO of Ario. Wish you the best of luck, man.
Thanks, Chris.
Hey, thanks again. Yeah.